The 21st century is dotted not by a single battlefield, but by many. Across continents, nation-states and militias fight for territory, influence, and survival, and the consequences are global. In the next 10 minutes, we'll move from Europe to the Middle East, Asia, and Africa to summarize 10 active conflicts, what's happening now, the human cost, and the dangerous ways these wars feed one another. Any one spark could produce a wider conflagration. 1. Russia, Ukraine. Since February 2022, a full-scale invasion has turned the Russia-Ukraine front into the biggest conventional war in Europe since 1945. Estimates vary. Independent think tanks place combined military casualties and wounded in the hundreds of thousands, and civilian deaths and injuries in the tens of thousands. Displacement numbers run into the millions. Cities have been repeatedly shelled, energy and water infrastructure damaged, and whole districts flattened. The humanitarian and economic toll is staggering. Militarily, the war has become a grinding war of attrition, heavy artillery, missile strikes, drones, and fortified front lines. Forecast: absent a decisive breakthrough or negotiated settlement, expect continued costly offensives, high attrition, and extended disruption to global grain and energy markets. 2. Israel versus Hamas. Israel versus Hamas, Gaza. The October 2023 attacks and the subsequent Israeli military campaign transformed Gaza into one of the world's most acute humanitarian disasters. Independent studies and health authorities report tens of thousands of Palestinian deaths and very large-scale displacement inside a densely populated strip. Urban warfare, tunnel networks, rocket barrages into Israel, and high-intensity Israeli air and ground operations have produced severe civilian suffering, destroyed infrastructure, and international political fallout. Prediction: unless durable ceasefire terms and reconstruction guarantees emerge, the Gaza front will continue to flare in cycles, with periodic escalations drawing international actors into mediation, sanctions, or direct support roles. 3. Israel versus Hezbollah. Israel versus Hezbollah, Northern Front. Along Israel's northern border, Hezbollah has established an arsenal of rockets and precision missiles. When cross-border exchanges begin, as they have repeatedly, the scale and range of Hezbollah's weapons raise the stakes beyond localized skirmishes. Recent months have seen sustained rocket exchanges, Israeli airstrikes on Lebanese territory, and large civilian displacement in southern Lebanon. A larger war between Israel and Hezbollah would likely draw in regional backers and could close ports and choke key shipping lanes with severe regional consequences. Forecast: the risk of a widening Lebanon war is real. Even limited escalation could invite Iranian-backed support for Hezbollah and broader regional retaliation. 4. China versus Taiwan. China versus Taiwan tension. Beijing continues to assert sovereignty over Taiwan and has increased naval patrols, live fire exercises, and air incursions near the island. Taiwan has modernized its defenses and deepened security ties with partners, while global supply chains, especially semiconductors, make a Taiwan crisis a global economic shock. Analysts warn the risk comes from miscalculation during exercises, blockade scenarios, or a narrowly contained strike that triggers large power involvement. Prediction: short of overt invasion, expect persistent pressure campaigns, surgical coercion, and diplomatic isolation attempts. However, any attempted forced reunification could risk drawing the United States and its allies into direct confrontation. 5. North Korea versus South Korea, Korean Peninsula. The Korean Peninsula remains a tinderbox. North Korea's test launches, nuclear rhetoric, and military parades continue, while South Korea upgrades defenses and conducts joint exercises with allies. Recent North Korean statements emphasize an expanded nuclear arsenal and new missile tests for deterrence. The immediate risks include missile tests misfiring, artillery duels along the demilitarized zone, or an accidental clash during exercises. Prediction: the status quo of deterrence will likely continue, but strategic distractions, such as allied redeployments to other regions or large-scale provocations, could quickly raise the odds of direct confrontation. 6. Iran versus Israel, the shadow war. Iran and Israel have been engaged in a low-visibility but intense confrontation for years. Strikes by proxies, cyber attacks, maritime harassment, and targeted killings. In recent months, that shadow war has burst into more direct exchanges, attacks on ships, airstrikes inside neighboring countries, and strikes attributed to Israel and its allies against Iranian targets. This layered campaign is now interconnected with operations by external powers and regional militias, making the theater highly volatile. Prediction: the conflict's asymmetric and cross-domain nature makes it unpredictable. Escalation could be rapid if a strike kills senior commanders, hits critical infrastructure, or triggers hostile state responses. 7. India versus Pakistan. India versus Pakistan, Kashmir. The India-Pakistan rivalry remains among the world's most dangerous because both are nuclear-armed and disputes persist over Kashmir. Periodic cross-border strikes, militant attacks, and tit-for-tat aerial incidents keep tensions high. Recent years saw deadly incidents and short flare-ups that required immediate diplomatic damage control. Prediction: localized clashes will continue. The greatest danger is miscalculation during a border incident or a proxy-sponsored attack that triggers a wider military exchange. Nuclear doctrines and political rhetoric mean small fights can have outsized strategic consequences. 8. Armenia versus Azerbaijan, Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh has been a festering source of violence since the Soviet collapse. After intense fighting in recent years and negotiated steps towards normalization, tensions remain over borders, displaced populations, and political guarantees. While full-scale war has so far been avoided since 2024-2025 ceasefires and limited deals, ceasefire violations and slow political progress mean the situation is fragile. Without durable guarantees and reliable international mediation, outbreaks of violence and humanitarian displacement remain likely. The region's strategic corridors also make it sensitive to wider great power competition. 9. Sudan, Civil War, SAF versus RSF. Sudan's 2023 power struggle between the National Armed Forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces has turned into one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Millions are internally displaced, tens of thousands reported killed, health systems and markets destroyed, and mass food insecurity across several states. The violence has regional spillover risks as neighboring countries host refugees and armed groups exploit porous borders. Prediction: unless a political settlement emerges, Sudan's conflict will remain protracted with periodic cross-border effects and opportunities for regional actors to deepen involvement. 10. Yemen, Civil War, Government versus Houthis. Yemen's long war has created a catastrophic humanitarian emergency. Frontline fighting, Houthi missile and drone strikes into Red Sea shipping lanes, and a fractured political landscape have left millions hungry and displaced. International efforts have occasionally reduced violence, but the conflict persists as a regional proxy contest, and energy route disruptions have global economic impacts. Prediction: absent sustained diplomacy and humanitarian access, Yemen will remain a source of regional instability and intermittent shocks to maritime security. The question arises that how these wars can trigger World War III. We've just traveled 10 flashpoints, but they are not isolated. They connect in 3 dangerous ways. Alliance entanglement. Powerful states back local actors through weapons, money, intelligence, and bases. When patrons clash, local fights can become proxy battlegrounds for larger powers. See NATO, US, Iran, Saudi, Russia involvements.